And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen out there, thank you for joining us again for another episode of What Are We Doing with Pursuit of Purpose in our ongoing series about the addiction to distraction. I'm Rob.
I'm Chuck.
And today we have with us a very special guest contributor on the show. He's been one of our interview guests here at our Pursuit of Purpose podcast. I'm going to let him introduce himself and just tell you guys a little bit about himself.
I appreciate it. I'm Kent Hutchison. I'm from Orange, Texas. Born and reared there. Lived all over the place, but work in industry. Work with LNG, but also do leadership development. And I work with a lot of organizations with their organizational design. Their folks. This is an interesting topic. When you reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to have a conversation about addiction to distraction?" I was like, "Absolutely," because we do it in our safety moments and so forth. But that's my background is just for the last 27 years actually. I've been working with people, just kind of helping folks improve their lives, coaching them and helping them become more productive folks.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. So where'd you go to school?
I went to Orangefield, man. I'm an Orangefield Bobcat, man. I'm also a Stephen F. Austin lumberjack.
Very good. You know, we had another lumberjack on the show.
Yeah,
we had another lumberjack actually on this series.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
You know him very well, Dr. G.
I do know Dr. G. Dr. G's a great guy. His advisor and mentor was my mentor, so it's kind of we Dr. G and I have a long history, so it's fantastic. But yeah, I went to Lamar University for the first couple of years, and then transferred. I was redshirted academically. That's how my dad would introduce me. I was redshirt, best 5.5 years to get my undergraduate, and I majored in girls, I believe. But no, I was distracted. And this was pre-cell phones. I was distracted.
Well, you majored in one of the most difficult and prolific topics that any young man could participate in.
That's right. Good, just a good Christian boy trying to do my help, man.
Right.
It's not by accident that most of those guys end up with a bachelor's and not a master's in that topic.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, we appreciate our Nacogdoches connection, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Very much so. So as we've said, we're talking about what we consider to be a global pandemic of the addiction to distraction. And what we're hoping in this discussion is that we actually generate a bit of a movement where people become aware and they begin to learn value-added measures to mitigate our addiction to distraction and the damaging effects of it. We do realize that phones and technology and social media have wonderful aspects. They have great positive things that they can help us with in life. But our constant need to be attached to them is very much damaging to our career, to our social structure, and to life in general. And so the question to you to start us off with, Kent, is let's talk about your industry. You work for Cameron LNG, and what do you do for them?
I'm in the training and competency specialist, working in the training department, which is a subset of our human resources department.
So when you're doing your training and you're working on competency, do you ever judge people negatively for seeing them have to have their phone in their hand while you're trying to work with them?
I'm gonna go back to and yes, the short answer is absolutely yes. Let's go back to being born and reared in Southeast Texas, and I don't know if I'm fortunate. My mother is still with me; she's in her 80s. But my mother taught me something. She says we listen to people with our eyes.
That's right.
And we hear with our ears. We listen with our eyes. And I remember 4th of July several years ago. My brother's 9. I'm the youngest, man. So I'm in my 50s. So I have a brother who's in his 60s. And we were messing around, and my mom said, "Look at me when I'm talking to you boys," and she wanted us to look at her. And so I talk about that in my workshops, and I said, why do we want our children to look at us? And it's because we know they're paying attention. Well, I think the same is true in industry or in retail, particularly in retail. I mean, how many times we've gone to a checkout area and the checkout clerk's not making eye contact, or you're talking to your car repairman and they're multitasking and they're distracted. But yes, to answer your question, do I get frustrated if I go into a meeting and someone's on their laptop, someone's on their pad, or they're on their phone? and they think they're multitasking. I'm like, no, you're doing a couple of things at one time. You're not doing any of them. You're not multi anything. You're just doing a bunch of tasks, and you're not hearing. You're not listening. You may hear the words, but you're not listening, and it is frustrating. And I think it's we all need to be conscious of that. I think it's be present in the moment.
You brought up a really good point about the multitasking thing. We have this lie that we tell ourselves that we're able to do more than one thing at once, and it's actually a lie. It's impossible. You may be able to switch back and forth quickly between tasks, but what you're actually doing when you quote unquote multitask is you're sacrificing. You're sacrificing. You're not only sacrificing the things that you're supposed to be doing, but you're sacrificing your integrity.
Right.
Because you have zero commitment to any one task.
Yep.
That to me, that's a problem. Like,
right.
We need focus. We need integrity in order to create, in order to become, in order to move forward as people. And like, how can we call ourselves, like, you're in a position of leadership, and then you have leaders above you and leaders that are subordinate to you. How can we be a leader and illustrate leadership if we are dividing our integrity, if we're not people of one mind?
Well, if there's a leading, there's a destination, and I presume in most industries, a destination is going to be some type of fulfillment. Things are going to get done, and if we're multitasking, as we're kind of in that little part of our discussion theory right now, then evidently productivity is going to be affected. And now there's other factors, there's safety in those things, and maybe we'll get into that today. But right now, what comes to my mind is people are not working up, not just to their potential, but to the worth that maybe their paycheck says they are. We're paying these folks to finish things and finish them at a certain level. And are we as a consumer, then whether that's the people in the leadership, and the bosses types, or whether that's those of us out here in the market, are we allowing ourselves to be satisfied with an inferior product?
Right.
That's maybe influenced by this distractions.
Well, and it's a stimuli in our body. I mean, that's why there's several series out there on YouTube as well as Netflix and so forth about the addiction to our screens, whether it's phone or tablets or laptops, and the little red button. I mean, there's a reason that it shows you. You have 42. Let me pull up mine real quick. What do I have here on my phone? It says I have 88 emails. I don't think that's not a distraction. I mean, it's and there's a reason for those red buttons that it creates, and we want to. Oh my God, I'm going to check that out, and that's why notifications on social media, and it just gets us more and more distracted, and it really boils down to it. It's not easy. It is not easy to break the cycle. The science behind addiction. It's the brain processes all this. I was reading when you told me the topic. I started kind of doing some reading on the topic as well to make sure my thought process lined up with what the academic article say. But yes, I mean it's human nature to be distracted, but we've got to make a conscious choice not to and be present in the moment. And you talk about safety in the industry. One of the safety moments I heard this week, was talking about people texting and walking in the poles or walking off of a curb, and just minor incidents, or walking out in the parking lot, walking out in front of traffic. And I've seen that. I've done that at the mall. I've done that by Jason's Deli there in Beaumont, where I come out and someone's walking out of the restaurant and they're just looking at the screen, and it's distraction and not having that situational awareness. But more importantly, it's not only a safety factor. I just think about the relationships factor. How many times have you gotten down with somebody and they're just on their phone, and you're like, "Are you here?" I don't feel like you're listening to me.
That's right. And how many times have you been in a room, like, say a conference or a training seminar or what have you, and you look out across the crowd and you see half or more than half of these people, they're not getting anything out of what you've brought them. They're not getting anything out of the experience of the training, because they're immersed in that device that's in their hand. They've totally foregone any value to add to themselves so that they can feed that addiction. And what a sacrifice we're making as a species. And we don't even realize it. We blind ourselves to the reality that we're just caught in this, the cycle. We've talked about it on previous episodes. You know, you mentioned anxiety, but that anxiety produces cortisol. Mm-hmm. And then we want to mitigate the cortisol by getting dopamine. So we answer the call to the anxiety by clicking on the red button or whatever it is, mm-hmm. and then you get the dopamine. Yeah. Then you feel the sense of accomplishment. So then you get the oxytocin, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the feeling of satisfaction. So you put it down for a minute. And then you start to get anxiety because it vibrated or it moved or something. Or
well, and following the psychiatric science, if you will. Now once I get my peak of oxytocin, now it starts to wane a little bit, mm-hmm. and I'm already starting to build the crave.
Yeah.
And so next thing you know, I'm sitting, and I may pretend that I'm responsible. I sit down in a meeting, I flip my phone down so I don't see my screen. But boy, the first chance I get, I peek to see if my numbers are up, if my little red dot has doubled. Oh my goodness, I'm needed, I'm valued. I'm thinking, oh my word, how desperate is that?
Right.
Well, it rewires our brain. I mean, that dopamine, you know, when we get those releases and it rewires our brain, and then the behavior pattern, and it does become a very, the first thing we have to do to break that cycle is awareness. And I work for a company in Nacogdoches. Now they had various reasons for doing this, but probably alternative methods. But they had a system before you walked into a conference room, you put your phone in a basket outside the room, and said, if you're expecting a call, that's fantastic. Just tell the admin, and when it rings, they'll come get you. And I don't think that's why they did. I think they did so we wouldn't record the meetings, but here or there. But it broke that cycle. But it's hard. I mean, you've got to be present in the moment. This weekend, I was with some friends, and I actually commented to somebody. It was a Sunday afternoon, beautiful Sunday afternoon. We were all sitting around. Went to a local winery, and we were enjoying the wonderful weather that we had Sunday. And somebody broke their phone out, and I said, "I'm sorry, are we disturbing you?" I mean, they were like, "I'm just checking." I'm like, "Be here, be here, be present in the moment with me, or their group, be here. Don't, I
love the disclaimer. I'm just checking. I'm just doing anything. If it doesn't have a purpose, then it doesn't have a presence right now.
Right.
And we don't even so far, we haven't really touched on the insulting factor of it socially. Mm-hmm. You actually touched on it just then, a very important aspect of this addiction to distraction. It's really insulting when you are face to face in a group of people or just two people, and you're trying to have a social interaction, conversation, whatever it may be, with a friend or a significant other. It doesn't really matter, but a person, an actual in-person person, mm-hmm. and you pick that phone up. Yeah. You instantly disconnect from them, and you're in another realm. You have left them behind, right? And you've basically told them that they're not worth your presence. That's kind of disgusting.
Well, and then I'm 57 years old, and let's say we don't get our feelings hurt, and that'd be a lie, because even at 57 years old, our friends can hurt our feelings.
Well, yeah.
And I have a buddy of mine, a real good buddy of mine, and I have gone fishing with him. I've gone on the boat with him. I've partied with him. I've gone to church with him, and this guy is glued to his phone. So I see that behavior all the time. And then talk about this. Then at that time when you do text them and they don't text you back, you're going, I know you freaking saw the message, because the phone is glued to your hand.
Yeah.
And you get your feelings hurt. So I think you're right it's that distraction, but particularly with your face to face. But it really is distracting. And you were mentioning earlier about training. I went to a conference in Huntsville, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. This is really before cell phones and people had their cell phones, but everybody was starting to bring their laptops to meetings and take notes on laptops. And I was really impressed by this one conference. It was at Sam Houston State, and it was a criminal justice workshop. And they actually had a technology. They had the room divided, and 1/3 of the room 2/3 of the room was technology free, and they made a big deal. And they had 1/3 of the room was technology. And they said, if you're going to use your laptop or your tablet to take notes, do you mind sitting over here because you don't think it's distracting, but it's distracting to the people sitting around you who are just trying to listen. And I think about how many times I've been in a conference or at church or any public gathering, and someone has an electronic device. You're like, are they listening to the minister? Are they on? Are they looking at the Bible on the iPad? Or are they looking at Facebook? I'm looking. Now I'm distracted.
Yeah.
And as a speaker, I've done that too. I've told people. I said, hey, I get that I don't make people turn their phones off as a speaker or trainer, but I do try to set myself up for success and saying, hey, I realize we're glued to these things. We all have, I have elderly parents. We all have children. We feel like we have to stay connected. I say, I want you to treat a text message just like a telephone call. Step outside and take it, because you don't think you're being distracted, but you're distracting those around you. And I'm going to be frank, as a speaker, it looks odd when you look out in the audience and someone's doing this.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what they're doing. I mean, they're not hiding it by having it on the table and looking down at it. And so it is distracting. And I don't think so many people recognize that how distracting it is. But it's an addiction. It's an addiction. It's like we said, it gives us that dopamine. It gives us that chemical reaction, and it rewires our brain.
Right. Yeah, I'm a member of a business networking group, and we actually have a place where we want people to put their phones. It's a little table type area. We call it a commitment. You're committing to be off your phone for an hour and a half. And part of the promotion is not just so you get the most out of the meeting, but people pay to be a part of this. And we remind them they have a fiduciary investment in what's going on here in order to promote not only your business, but also promote their own. Right. And so if you are that disinterested in what you've committed to, then maybe this isn't the right place for you. Right. I mean, that's, and we don't say that in a mean way. We just get people thinking, and a lot of people will get up and drop their phones, and we give them incentives. If your phone's up here, you might win a little door prize or something, but the real point is the respect for the other 40, 50 people in the room and the reason that they're there. So I like the compartmentalizing to say, this is a tech-free zone. Right. This is people who are pen and paper, and as Mama would say, look at me.
Yeah. So there was sometime years ago, I was told that, if you're in the zone, cranking things out, just getting things done, and all cylinders are firing, and the phone rings or somebody walks in, or it dings, and we look at our phone, that it took us 17 minutes once we handled the problem. It took us 17 minutes. The latest research I'm seeing here says it takes us 23 minutes. So once you have that distraction, so we're in the zone, we're making progress, and I pick up my phone and go, I'm just checking.
Right.
Checking for a minute. It potentially could take me 23 minutes to get back to that same level of concentration I was before I picked up the phone.
Wow.
And to me, that's the declining in our productivity.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. In industry, that's dollars.
Yeah.
That and productivity.
Right.
Are you involved in the acquisition of new employees at all?
Well, I'm on the onboarding.
Okay, perfect.
I don't have anything to do with the recruiting or hiring, but once they come on board, I'm part of the launch team that launches them.
So if you get a new member of the team and you're doing your process onboarding or what have you, these are careers, right? Mm-hmm. These are long-term, high-paying, high-end, respectable careers where people can go work and retire with pretty significant income, right?
Right.
So if a person makes it through the hiring process and gets to you on your onboarding, and I'm sure you're a part of a team.
Right.
If you were to get a bad vibe from them, that could, pretty seriously negatively impact their future, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would not. I don't know if I have that much power, but no, it potentially, it potentially could influence.
You have influence,
it could potentially influence a career. But I think it's important. I think you're right, especially for young people. But I want to caution not just the young people. I have teenage. I'm teenage. I have 20. My daughter's 24 and 28, so they're not. They're to me they're still my baby girls, but I get it. But I'm looking at men and women at my age, our age, that I'm disappointed in the fact that how distracted we are, whether it's driving. I mean, you can drive in the Interstate 10 and you say, oh, it's a drunk driver. No, it's not a drunk driver. It's probably someone on their phone. It's probably someone because they slow down. They think that, oh, I better slow down, but they'll get over the right lane, but they'll slow down and they'll slow down to 40 miles per hour, and you're like, dude, we're on the freeway, and they put that phone up,
and their
Facebook message can wait.
Yeah. So what would, I'm guilty. I'm 100% like
this is therapy for us right now. Let's admit it. This is therapy for the three of us right now because we're addicted to our freaking devices. We thought, well, better topic. Let's talk about distraction because we're freaking distracted.
Yeah, just so our audience knows, we can't see y'all, but we can see us. So that's who we're really talking to.
That's right.
Look, it's sitting right here. It's gone off twice since we're sitting here, and I mean,
I keep showing y'all as an example, but what am I doing?
You're looking at. So I'm going to ask a question. I know it doesn't have to do with you necessarily because you're in the office, but your company wise, as far as policy goes, what does a company do to maintain productivity and focus with that subject? Like, how does Cameron LNG address this issue? Because I know they have to have policy that addresses it, somewhat effectively.
Well, I can't speak on behalf of Cameron LNG, but I can speak for industry in general. Okay. I think a lot of industry, they have mechanisms in place. For example, you don't take your phone out in the field. No different than Target or Walmart saying, hey, salespeople, don't take your phone out into the floor, sales floor, and so forth. Now, once again, it's how are you going to enforce that? Are you going to enforce that? What do you do if you catch someone in with the phone in their pocket, but they weren't using it? Or what do you do if you catch someone using it over the toy owl, or you catch someone, it goes back to you do have to have good, clear policies. A lot of organizations do. Those of us here in Southeast Texas, most of us that have worked in or around the industry know that a lot of the industry in this area uses highly flammable, combustible chemicals, whether you're in Orange, Port Arthur, Louisiana. And so the discussion of is it intrinsically safe so don't have it out in the field, but yet we still catch people out in the field with it. We still catch contractors in the car with it. And so, a lot of organizations do have policies and procedures, but it all depends on how are you going to enforce it.
Right.
I think I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that I think awareness is a key. And I think having conversations like today of just like, hey, are we being distracted? Are we allowing ourselves? And it's a choice we make. I mean, it's a choice we're making. I took Facebook. I didn't take Facebook off my phone, and notice I didn't look at it. And then, I put it here where I can see it. No, I didn't. I put it where it's not in my service tray, so I have to dig for it. It's in a folder on my phone, so it doesn't just ding at me down at the bottom where my email does. And my messengers, my voicemails. And I think that we have to make some choice. There's been times where I've taken it off my phone and said, I'm going to look at it on my desktop only, because I found myself being distracted by looking for that dopamine or, did anybody respond? Did anybody like my post? No one's liked that picture yet. Or I talked about this. And that's sad.
Have you ever taken a sabbatical from technology?
I did a couple of years ago. Actually, it's I really don't want to get into politics, but it was several years ago during one of the elections. After I literally got off of Facebook for about 9 months, and I was off all social media for about 9 months. And the only reason I got back on, and it took about 9 months for me to finally break the cycle of missing it. But what I got back on for was, like we all do, I was missing funerals. I was missing birthday events. I was missing events, people's lives. And so now I've got to realize, social media for me, or my devices with social media, it's a tool. And I've got to use that tool. It's no different than me coming to work with a newspaper and just sitting in the break room and reading my newspaper all day. And that's kind of what, that's the analogy. Now, some of the folks listening don't know what a newspaper was, but it used to be a paper thing that we got every day. I got, the Beaumont Enterprise arrived every morning.
That's right. That's right. It had a mix.
The news came in the afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, that's that's the way you relate to it is you looking at your phone periodically is no different than someone walking around with a romance novel between meetings, and you see them opening that romance novel up in the meeting, opening their romance novel up. I'm just going to read 2 pages. I just want to, that's exactly what you're doing. You're not being productive. Now I think we use our guise of, hey, I got my laptop, I'm taking notes, but I'm also checking emails. But you're not being present. You're distracted. And right. I see it. That's what I see at work more than anything is not so much the phone, but people bringing their laptops because they may be presenting or co-presenting or looking at data, but they're also checking emails and they're just not being present in the moment. And I think there's some key there. I think we could cut out a lot of meetings if we said, hey, instead of having an hour meeting, we're going to have a 15-minute meeting. We come in here without any freaking electronics and let's focus on this for 15 minutes and we can get out of here.
You touched on something that I find to be extraordinarily valuable. I might be alone here in the office. I might have come up to the office with a specific task in mind. Like say the topic of the season is taxes, right? Everybody's working on doing their taxes and what have you. I came up here with the concept. I came early this morning to work on taxes.
Right.
So I sit down and I'm focused and I'm doing it. And I run into a little snag. So I pick up my phone. And I picked up my phone with the intent of working through my snag, but then I became distracted by the little alerts that were on my phone. And before you know it, I had spent 30 minutes or ish, give or take. And I had totally forgotten the entire purpose behind why I was sitting there in the first place.
Yeah.
I got caught up in the, what do you call it? A death scroll, where you just sit there and like you're watching the reels or watching, checking everybody's, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I've used a similar where I've picked up my phone, like, okay, I've finished a project. It's, it's 9:20. My next meeting's not till 10. I got a few minutes. I'm going to get up, go get a cup of coffee, and I'll grab my phone. I'm going to check a few things. And I look up, I'm like, oh crap, my meeting started 5 minutes ago because I was sitting right here having a cup of coffee, but I was scrolling or I was playing Sudoku or, and I'm going to tell you right now, and I went to the doctor now, we don't have to get into the whole story about me being burned with my heater on my butt. But I was in the doctor's office today and I purposely left my phone in my car, and I did that for a reason. And it was one of those things I thought, I think I enjoyed more sitting in the doctor's office, just people watching for 10 minutes, 15 minutes than I would have had I been on my phone just looking. And I was watching other people and they were just not making eye contact and they were just sitting down looking at their phone, scrolling. And I was like sitting there just looking at everybody, like, I wonder what they're in here for. I was people watching. I was, and I was like, man, that was so much more enjoyable than being on my phone, which I didn't miss anything. I mean, I didn't miss my Sudoku or what was the latest headline news. Guess what? It was going to be the same headline when I stepped outside 10 minutes from now.
Well, you touched on something earlier about how you were in a social circumstance this weekend, I think you said it was, where somebody else pulled out their phone. Well, what you did when you went in the doctor's office is you made yourself available for human contact.
Yeah. For
real human interaction.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that we haven't touched on it yet on any of these episodes, is that when we bury our head in that technology, we completely shut off any possibility to develop a human relationship interaction between one human to another. And that act is how we add value to ourselves and each other. Mm-hmm. We can't do it any other way.
Right.
We have to have that interaction.
Absolutely. And to bring an encouraging word and to spin off of what Rob just said, folks come in for their hour that they spend with us coaching and counseling. They're not on their devices and I don't have to say anything. Mine might be plugged in, but maybe it's like laying on a little shelf under my desk or sitting on top of my computer tower. It's where I don't see it.
Right.
And then I'll notice that they'll take theirs and they'll either flip it and put it on the couch next to them or put it in their bag.
Right.
And they don't take it out until it's time to reschedule. Then they pull out their calendar in most cases. And now that you guys mention it, it's impressive. People know, they understand that they want that human contact and
Right.
they want value from it. They don't. They know what they don't want in that moment. So that was that. As you mentioned it, that's very encouraging to me.
Well, and I'm wondering how many marriages, how many relationships have been destroyed, because it's one thing to go back and lay down in bed and read a book, but it's another when both parties lay down and getting ready for bed, and they're both glued to a screen, and they're in separate worlds. And I guess an argument could be made that you're reading a book and I'm reading a book, but I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if it's the same disconnect as it is with a screen time. And I'm amazed at how many times, even my adult daughters, and I think they're great. I think they're the greatest things since sliced bread. But how many times I have been sitting on the couch just in the room with them, and all three of us be on our devices, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't see you that often. Why are we on our devices at all? And it's we should question, and I think that's really good. I don't know what the full circles here is, what the discussion, the be all end all, but I think that another consequence of this is weakening relationships. And so if we're going to strengthen relationships, strengthen those human connections, and strengthen our productivity, strengthen our safety, driving or walking or so forth, we have to make a conscious choice of saying, I can change my behavior. I'm going to change my notifications. I'm going to change the way I use the tool. And then you just start, I think, having conversations about, this is my expectations when you come to meetings. I'd prefer you not having your laptop. I'd prefer you, taking notes. I'd rather you, I don't know what the answer is, but that, I think, I'm not saying we have to all go analog, but I do think that we use, instead of using technology like a bicycle where we're powering it, we're using technology more like an automobile where we're just getting in it and letting it take us somewhere.
I like that you emphasize the word strengthen, because we're all kind of in this, we're development promoters here. That's what the three of us do in our industry. And Rob and I were just talking about working out earlier before we started opening up the show. And I cannot work two muscle groups at the same time. I have to focus on one at a time. And if I can circuit, I can do this one and maybe do two or three, but then I have to come back. But I can't do 2 to 3 things at the same time, or I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to get out of balance, and I'm going to end up stretching something I didn't, and too far that I didn't intend to. But if I focus one at a time, I can get maximum benefit. And so you're strengthening or compartmentalizing, I guess is the word maybe I'm going for. Right. And maybe that's something we need to promote in different industries and trainings that we do, is to encourage people to, it's okay, have a compartment of no tech. Whatever that is. Maybe that's that hour before you go to bed where you just sit and visit with family, as you mentioned, Kent, and I something along those lines. And there has to be a profit from that. I just can't imagine there wouldn't be.
Well, I look back at my ex-wife, and she had a lot of wisdom there. And I remember at one time we went somewhere and she left her phone, and I said, "Oh, do you need to go back and get it?" She's like, "No." She says, everybody who's going to call me is in the car. I don't, and I was like, wow, and, but she made that comment several times, like, no, I don't need my phone because, whoever's going to call me is right here in this room. And I just was like, that's very powerful. I mean, that not only was that powerful on her part, but it was powerful saying how special we were, Now, obviously it didn't work out, but that's a whole other issue. No, I'm joking. 5 years ago, dude, I'm over it. Maybe. I'm sorry. I gotta distract y'all somehow.
We'll schedule you some time to come in, and you can
appreciate that.
And I promise that we'll leave our phones off while we talk to you. Right. But we're going to go ahead and we're winding the show down now. I mean, typically we keep our episodes about 30 minutes long, but I've got something interesting that I'm going to do that I've never done before. I'm going to issue a commitment to you two guys and to our audience, anyone out there who hears this or watches this, that if you see me in public, if I have my phone, I give you permission to come tell me. Get off your phone and be present in the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm going to commit that if I'm out in public, I don't need to be on my phone.
Yeah.
I will reserve my phone time for a time when I'm not around other humans.
Well, we'll cooperate that commitment. I likewise. I want that same message.
We've got to get to a place where we're not just talking about a problem, but we're experimenting with solutions, things that can actually make things better. So I'm going to make that commitment. Chuck has echoed that commitment. And I think we need to start experimenting with things for improvement.
Yeah.
I don't want us to say that phones are bad or social media is bad, because it's not.
No, no.
We pervert things. We bastardize things to the point that they are harmful.
Right.
The humans are the problem, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I had written down 4 solutions that I before today's call, I said one, we need to have that, and we talked about this, the digital detox or boundaries, setting a time like before bed, or hey, this is going to be a technology free time. My Sunday mornings, I like to drink coffee and watch the sunrise, and I don't bring my digital device outside, and so there's setting those boundaries. 2, something I had not thought about, but I'd read this, and it was called practicing deep work. And it says, really blocking out time where you're just going to do some deep work. I'm going to turn off notifications. I'm going to turn off my email notifications. I may be on my computer, but I'm going to work on this. And even set an egg timer, and set the egg timer in another room, so you're not even looking at the time. And like, hey, I'm going to work on this for an hour or 30 minutes or 20 minutes. And when bell goes off, I can get up. But for 20 minutes, I'm going to focus on this. I do believe in mindfulness meditation. Talking about multitasking, I don't work out, but I do like to walk. And I used to think, I can put my earbuds in, I can listen to NPR, I can listen to my podcast, I can, and I've just learned, what? When I'm walking, if I'm gonna walk for an hour, I need to listen to be present in my neighborhood and just listen to the neighborhood, listen to those kids laughing down the road, listen to that neighbor who's talking to me, but I can't hear them because I have my ear pods in. They're saying, howdy, howdy. And I'm just walking past them and thinking, what a snot that guy is. So being, that mindfulness of just, it's not like detox, but like when don't multitask. I mean, like even at the gym, we go to the gym, we put our music in. And I'm like, maybe we just need to go to the gym and just listen to the gym and listen, and be present in the moment of what's going on around us. And the last thing is, this is the one I've done well, but that's something I'm really going to focus on. And after this call, my commitment is prioritizing real life interactions. And the idea being is instead of having chats and text messages, let's meet for coffee. Let's meet for a cold beer. Let's go to church together. Let's take a walk together. But we've got to prioritize those real human interactions, and those things can help us with our digital detox, I guess.
Well, I love it. Those are wonderful ideas, Kent. Thank you for that. And you touched on your walking time in your neighborhood, and one of my favorite authors is John Maxwell. But I love a lot of different authors, Simon Sinek, Napoleon Hill, and all of these guys, these authors, they all talk about thinking time. And you talked about mindfulness, but they all have set aside specific time in their day. This is a daily thing that they all practice, where they go to a certain place at a certain time. And the purpose of that time is to think. They'll keep a notepad with a pencil or a pen or what have you to keep notes, but they don't bring technology. Their do not disturb sign is on the door, and they are there to activate their mind, to deep think. And I'm gonna make that commitment as well, that I'm gonna set aside time and develop the habit daily that I practice thinking, just thinking, without the need of anything else.
We'll be so much more creative. I mean, the 3 of us are of the age where we didn't have these devices and that distractions. And how many Saturday mornings, being the latchkey kids we were, we went out on a Saturday morning and didn't come back till noon or even the evening, and we were bored. And when we got bored, we found that paint can, we found that cardboard, we found that piece of plywood at that scrapyard of that house. And next thing you know, we're building a tree fort. And I think as humans, I think we forget that sometimes boredom is not bad.
No.
You know,
Dr. G talked about boredom being the gateway to creativity.
Yeah.
And I think that's completely accurate. I can't tell you how many spaceships I built or how many worlds I saved as a kid, because of boredom.
That's right.
So I'm going to commit to be bored.
I commit to be bored. I too commit to be bored.
Well, I want to thank y'all for inviting me to join you guys today. I love having these virtual coffees, and I love being there in the studio with you guys. But I love having these virtual coffees with you. Do this anytime. But I think this is an important topic for us to just stop and reflect. And I think awareness is a big key to that. And the challenge is not to resist distractions, but to cultivate that mindset that values being present in the present situation.
Well, Kent, we sure appreciate having you on the show. We appreciate all of our audience out there. Hope you heal up good. Hope you're able to.
We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about the heater safety, winter heater safety, and keeping your buns away from the heater. You won't make an ER visit. I do have a new book coming out. It's not ready yet. I don't know if you saw. It's bourbon. It's called Bourbon Cigars and a Good Goat. And it's just a bunch of ramblings from my. But that should be coming out later this year. But my publisher sent me a copy, and I make the burn story may make it. So,
well, I'm calling dibs on an autographed copy of that. One of the first ones. I gotta have it.
Bourbon Cigars and a Good Goat.
Well, thank you for being a guest on our show. We really appreciate it. We'll definitely have you back for future topics. We've got some good ones coming. Everybody out there, thank you for joining us for this episode of What Are We Doing in this Addiction to Distraction series. I'm Rob.
I'm Chuck.
And we've had with us
Kent
Hutchison. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
All right.